Hello and welcome. I finished Ender Lilies last night, and so I wanted to give it a little bit of time before I reviewed it. I gave it some time to settle, and now I'm prepared to talk about this game that has quickly become my game of the year so far. Granted, the year's not over yet. There's still a couple months left to go, but I very much love Ender Lilies. And the non-spoiler section of this review is that Ender Lilies is a really, really enjoyable Metroidvania, which I should specify now is my favorite genre. My favorite genre of video games is Metroidvania. I absolutely love Metroidvanias. Ender Lilies is a really, really solid Metroidvania. I think that it does have some issues. Some of the late game enemies are really annoying to fight. Specifically, two of them that I can think of are really a pain to fight, and it's tough to get through fighting them without taking damage. But they are in the last areas, right? So it makes sense that the tougher enemies would be there. I just wish that it was a little bit easier to deal with them. And granted, I didn't really mess with the parry system at all. So it's possible that it was a lot easier to deal with them than I thought. The other small complaint is that I don't love the map. I love completing the map. That's one of my favorite things to do in Metroidvanias. But I think the map is a little too boxy. It doesn't really show you a lot of the differences in layout and where the gates would be. There's just the little red dots to let you know there's another way out of here, and it's up somewhere. But I do also want to mention that this is the dev team's first game. So hopefully in a sequel, the map will be better. Also, that Ender Lilies is not a $60 game. It's only 25 bucks. So it is a lot cheaper than some of the other Metroidvanias that have a little bit better map. But some of the positives is that I don't think it's too difficult. It's not too easy, right? There are definitely some challenging boss fights, some challenging areas. A couple of the bosses took me quite a few runs to get down, but a couple of the bosses I beat first try, right? The game is difficult, but it is not hard. And there will be some people that will come to it expecting like Hollow Knight levels of difficulty that may say, hey, this is closer to a Symphony of the Night than it is to a Hollow Knight. But I think it absolutely is still worth playing. Ender Lilies Quietest of the Nights is 100% a great Metroidvania, a great game. And like I said, is currently my goatee. I think the music is incredible. Harmonious and Accolade are my two favorite songs so far. Accolade outro specifically, and we'll get into that in a minute as well. I think that the level themes are all really, really solid. Some of them are a little more swanky and fun, and some of them are a little more heartfelt and profound. The boss themes, there are two versions of them because the bosses have phases. And so you have the intro version, which is normally a little bit more subdued and normally, conveys the theme the boss is going for. And then the outro version, which is a lot more chaotic and fun. And I really, really enjoyed it. Uh, I think that being able to listen to those intro and outro separately is really good. I do think some of the bosses maybe needed a little bit more health. Because sometimes I didn't get to hear that whole outro theme. But for the most part, really, really solid. And then, like I said, the area themes are really good. I think that the main menu theme is really, really solid. I really love the characters, and I'll get more into the characters in the spoiler section. But movement in this game is really, really solid. I love the way, and it's how all Metroidvanias work, right? You start off with a very weak movement system, and then as the game goes, you unlock more movement abilities that make movement more fun. And I like the way movement works in this game. Your character isn't as fast as they could be because your character you're playing as is a little girl. And so her dodge, she falls to the ground, and it doesn't have as many iframes as you want it to. And she can't just immediately cancel out of it into a different move the way that you want her to. But as you continue to play the game and you get more movement abilities, more abilities that open up the world, I think they did a really good job of cementing, hey, these are the core abilities you need. There are ways to cheese them if you use the right spirit combinations, which we'll get into in a minute. But I think they did a really good job of setting in that core that you're focused on and then utilizing them. Of, hey, I know what I need to get here, so I'm going to leave this spot in the back of my mind until I come back once I have that movement ability. And the movement abilities are all tied to bosses in a way that feels really satisfying. They all make sense with the lore. It's very, very solid in that way. Granted, I said a minute ago you can cheese them, and you can. If you use the right spirits, you can cheese just about anything. And you get these spirits by exploring, by fighting mini bosses. And all of these are tied into the world as well. It's not quite as robust as, say, a Bloodstained or a Aria of Sorrow, right? But instead, where it lacks in the vast quantity of spirits or familiars or whatever you want to call them, right, that you can summon, it focuses down on the ones that you have, and they all have some really cool situational uses. And because of that, you can utilize them all in many different ways. I've already seen a bunch of tier lists of people doing of spirits, and it's really funny to me when I see a section on there I've never touched, and it's got most of the spirits that I used in my playthrough. And I'm really excited to do New Game Plus so I can focus on trying to use some of the other ones. There's a relic system in the game that allows you to equip different relics that give you different stat boosts or different effects. And there are relics that I never used that I think would be really interesting to use. I love the way the level system works in this game. As you level, you don't gain more HP. You only get more HP by exploring or equipping relics. Instead, as you level, you do more damage. So although you can upgrade your spirits, you can also just passively do more damage as you level. And the XP gain is pretty good. By the time I reached the final area and got to the final boss, I was level 91 out of 100. So all I needed to do then was go back and grind 9 levels, which is really easy to do in that final area, because those final enemies, although they're a pain to fight, drop a lot of XP. All told, before I get into spoilers, because we're about to transition into spoilers, I think Ender Lilies is an incredible Metroidvania that I had a blast with. I understand the flaws that it does have, and I think those that everybody needs to remember is that it's not hard, it's just difficult. So don't go into it expecting an incredibly difficult game, and that some of those late game enemies really are a pain to fight. Some of those areas in the late game have a lot of enemies in them. And that's good because you get a lot of XP. You get to play around with the really satisfying combat. But I can see where some people would be turned away from that. I also think that some people won't enjoy the way the story's told. I love piecing together the story of a ruined civilization after it has collapsed, right? That is my favorite type of story to be told. It's why I love Dark Souls 1 so much. I love piecing everything together, and as I'm playing through the game, getting bits and pieces, and then eventually having the whole in front of me and going, how does it all fit? I love that. And so Ender Lilies 100% hit home for me, because that's what you do in this game. You do get more cutscenes than you do in some other games that have the lost civilization that you're trying to understand after it's fallen apart. I don't know what the trope name for that is, but these cutscenes really help cement where things are at in the world and what order things happened in a way that I think is really cool. I cannot recommend this game enough, and I 100% think that you should play it. As I said, right now, it's my current game of the year. So now we'll get into the spoiler section, and if you do not want to be spoiled on this game, you should wait to finish this section until after you have played the game yourself and either beaten it or have decided it's not for you. It took me about 20 hours to beat the game, so just keep that in mind. Some of that time was spent in menus where I would go and make food, something like that, but just keep in mind it took about 20 hours roughly. Now that we're in spoilers, let's talk about the story, because I think the story of the King of the First Age that brings his armies to go fight against the ancient warriors because they couldn't get along, and the way that it slowly turns into the king's desire for atonement, and then the later king that has completely twisted that desire and now wants only immortality, and the way that it unravels and affects everybody. I think the white priestesses and everything that happens there with them, and how they're from that ancient civilization, and there are those that have sworn deathless pacts to the white priestesses and are to the entire bloodline, right? And then you have the blight and how the white priestesses are the only ones that can resist it, but even they can't resist it totally. It all ties together to set the stage for the story in a way that's really good. And then as it unravels, because you don't have the magic of the ancients anymore, you don't have all of the ways that they protected the white priestesses. You instead have a kingdom that is desperately trying to get this white priestess to save them while also desperately trying to save her. And so you have on the front facing side, you have the king and the white priestess, and all the people are happy with the way of the white parish and trying to make sure that everybody protects the priestess with the guardians so that she can get there and do her job to stop the blight and to purify it. And then you have the underbelly of the kingdom, which is Faden and the King's Mage Brigade and attempting to make clones of the White Priestess because she's not going to make it much longer. And just the unraveling story of all the connections of Fredia and Elaine and Julius and the priestesses, the clones, and how it all comes together is really cool to me and really profound. And I love this story of you're the last one. You're the sole remaining clone that is alive. Because of that, the Umbral Knight has come to you. Deathless Pact is not finished. And he's come to protect you, although he also is considering killing you to free himself from his pact, but chooses not to do so because you're just a kid. And you start unraveling it. You meet Sigrid and find out that she cared for this girl named Lily that was also one of the white priestesses, and she was her guardian. And you go, well, you must have been Lily. It must have been you, right? Because you get that memory later with Jared where, hey, that's Lily, right? And as you slowly piece it together that, no, you're not Lily. You're going to use the name Lily because you're going to carry on what she was doing. But you weren't Lily. You were the last one. And all of your sisters are dead. And most of the kingdom is dead. And all that remains are the twisted amalgamations created by Faden in an attempt originally to save Fredia, the White Priestess of the Fount, but then later to try and save the woman that he loves, Muriel. And that's all that's left here. And you fight all of these crazed blighted, right? But then you also fight these that were the experiments that still have their self and just can't control their bodies. A mind that still remembers what has happened and can see what is going on, but cannot control the body anymore. And you purify them. And it's horrifying, and it's tragic, and it's beautiful as you slowly start to save these people. And I think the one that really hits home, I'm going to talk about each of these bosses individually, but the one that really hit home is the Castletown Maiden, who's been fused with her dog by the blight, and she just doesn't attack you. She just sits there. And you save her, and it's like, well, yeah, this dog wouldn't attack a little girl because he had a little girl that he was supposed to protect. And it just, it hit so hard. Oh, I love this story so much. I love these characters. But you have Sigrid, right? And I have the list up here so I don't forget any of their names. But you have Sigrid, and she is the protector, right? She wasn't chosen to be the guardian of the White Priestess of the Fount, but she was chosen to be the guardian of one of the clones, Lily. And so she's going to protect her, right? She has devoted herself to that cause. And so she is the first obstacle that you have to fight because she has lost it. She has lost control of her body, and now she stays in the cathedral right before where Lily is at, right? She is the shield even now. And you defeat her. And then after you defeat her, you get to use her as a weapon. You can control her spirit and command it to fight, which is super sick. And also she's really helpful because she also works in the water. But it's a really fun boss fight. I think the music in this boss fight, Rosary, is very, very solid. I like it a lot for an opening boss fight. It's not too difficult. It took me about 4 tries. I like it a lot. And at this point, I was obviously still using the Umbral Knight. because he has infinite uses. So I'm going to be using him for a while, right? After that, you get into the city proper, and that's where you get the best song in this game, in my opinion, which is Harmonious, which is where Lily sings along with it, and it's beautiful. It's dun dun dun, and then she goes dun. It's so good. But you get to Jared, and Jared is this behemoth of a man that chose willingly, just like all these others, these main bosses that you fight, to become to drink the deathless elixir, right? To become an immortal, to be able to defend the city and protect people. And you find out he's super old. And even now he tries to guard the way to the village so that nothing can get through. And obviously when the Reign of Death came, it was too much anyway. But you fight him and you take him on, and he is this hulking behemoth with this great hammer, and you'd finally defeat him and purify him, and that's where you get the memory of, hey, he helped build so much of what the kingdom was before it fell. He truly was a great hero and a great man, and when the blight came, it just didn't matter. He just couldn't stop him. Even then, it took over, but he still chose to defend, and it's just a great story. And after that, you get Dark Witch Elaine, who was Fredia's friend, and more than anything, she just wanted to help her. And so she had the coven trying to figure out how to reverse the blight that had taken hold of Fredia. And when you find her, she is at the lowest point of the coven, and she's over this pool of water, and you defeat her, and it's probably the toughest fight in the early game for me. I think I died here like 10 times before I finally took her down. But you get this really tragic story of she just wanted to help her friend. That's all. And she wanted to visit her friend, and Fredia was in bad shape, and they didn't know how long she had, and Elaine gives you each of the bosses give you a different ability, right? Siegfried gives you the double jump. Jared gives you the hammer down dive to be able to break through the red walls that are floors, right? And then Elaine gives you a bubble, and in many ways, that bubble that protects you and goes around you so you can fully move in the water is what she wanted to be able to do for Fredia, and it hits right here. Again, I love the characters in this game, and I've seen some people online say, well, these characters are too one-dimensional, and I don't think they are. I think when you look at things from their perspective and what they were trying to do, I think they're very well written for the little bits of dialogue and little bits of story that we have about them. Next up is Silva, and Silva is Siegfried's sister, who wanted more than anything to be able to protect her. A fissure, a divide came up between them because Silva outperformed Siegfried, and so got chosen to be Fredia's bodyguard and Fredia's guardian, where Siegfried was then pushed back and wasn't allowed to be the White Priestess of the Fount's guardian. And Siegfried later, of course, becomes Lily's guardian, but Silva did all this to try and help protect her sister, and then wasn't strong enough, wasn't good enough at the end. Recognized that the Blighted Lord should not have been purified the way that it was, that Fredia was too tired, but it was too late, and it just wasn't enough. And I think Silva is a really tragic character. I love Silva's theme. Bible is so good. I didn't mention that I really like Jared's theme, Helplessness, and I really like Elaine's theme, Communication, as well. But Bible is really strong, and I think what makes it so strong is that you can hear bits and pieces of Siegfried's theme, Rosary, in it, because they're sisters. They're connected, right? And you get those little bits of it musically to remind you they're connected. Oh, it's so good. And Silva's ability is really solid, too. I forgot to mention Jared's ability and Elaine's ability. But Elaine's ability that you get when you use her as a spirit, I used the entire game. That magic shot is really powerful and has really good tracking on it for the most part. And Jared's ability is how I beat Elaine, that strong hammer swing that took so much of her stamina. Silva's ability is a hammer swing that can be charged up, can be used to break some very difficult things later on that are tough to break, and also can be used to cheese a lot of the platforming. because you can jump 2 swings, start a charge, and jump again, and it's very very good. But Silva's ability, the main thing you get is the charge, right? That's where it really shines through, and it, for the most part, can be used underwater as well. There's some, I say for the most part because there are some difficult spots where you might not want to be using the charge underwater, but the regular attack is still really good. I like Silva's story a lot. Then we get to my 4 favorites, and it may sound like I'm nuts because I've been talking about how much I love these other ones so much, but my 4 favorites are Ulf, the Mad Knight, who chose, just like the others, to drink the Deathless Elixir and to defend the kingdom, right? The kingdom of Land's End, and then slowly started losing himself. And the last thing that he has to hold on to is that the White Priestess loved this field of flowers, and she was his friend. And so when you find him, he's in a field of flowers because even though he's completely lost himself, he's still defending that field of flowers. And it just, man, his attack is really fast, so he's fun to use as a spirit, right? He's got a really cool charge move that is basically a pile bunker that is really powerful and can be used to break those same things that Silva's can later. But he gives you a wall grab, which is really, really useful. But where it really shines for me is that story of he doesn't know what he's doing anymore, right? He's lost it completely, but he'll defend this field of flowers because his friend liked it. And it just, oh. I'm going to skip my personal favorite of all of them and come back to him because next up is Honier, the Keeper of the Abyss. Honier is solid. I think he gets the least characterization from his memories out of all of them, right? But the notes that you get are what really sells his story. The Dark Executioner who was hiding it from his family, whose sister died in childbirth, and who chose to raise up her child himself. There's a lot of stuff we don't know there, right? There's a letter that says that the king had his beloved son stolen from him and that he was trying to find the monster that took him. And we don't know if this is a different son because he didn't know Julius was his son. We're going to get to that in a minute. Or if this is talking about Honier stealing away Julius to be able to raise him. But either way, I think Honier, his abilities aren't as useful. I think the lantern throw is really nice. The dagger is solid. It has really short range, but it's solid, and it goes out really fast. But I think his story is the best part about him as well, just like Ulf. Then we have Phaedon the Heretic, who is like my second favorite of these. And I've seen some people that don't really seem to like him that much, and I get it. You know, you get very late into the game, and by that point you've got a bunch of other spirits that you like a lot more. But Phaedon's story is super tragic. He starts off trying to find a way to save Fredia and trying to find a way to help her, and he's working with half information as he tries to decipher these things that the ancients have left behind. Fredia doesn't know enough to be able to tell him, and so he's trying to figure things out, and then Muriel gets affected by the blight. And she doesn't attack him, no matter what. And so he starts experimenting on the blight because now he knows there's still a shred of humanity that can exist in there. And he thinks maybe he can find a way to save her, and that becomes his whole focus in life. The only thing that matters to him is trying to save the woman he loves, and it leads him down this dark path where he's fusing people with horses and with gargoyles and just desperately trying to make it all work to see if he can find a way to save her. And he can't. And so then in his last experiment, he desperately tries to find a way to atone, right? To fix everything that he's done. He's made these clones of Fredia, and it wasn't good enough, and nothing's working. And so he has these ancient tablets, but he can't decipher them all because he doesn't get it, because it's written by the ancients, and he doesn't understand it all. So he hides them away, hoping that somebody else can, and dies. It's so powerful to me. You don't fight Phaedon. You fight Muriel. and then you find his corpse behind her. And it just, oh, it's so potent. It's so powerful. And the only one that beats it to me is Knight Captain Julius. We get in his notes, we see that Knight Captain Julius is like a man of unparalleled bravery and is upright and, just desperately wants to help protect the kingdom. And he drinks the deathless elixir so that he can protect the kingdom and the White Priestess. And he's doing his best to fight and to help. And he gets to the king that all he wants is for his father, the king, to recognize his worth. It's all he wants. He wants to be worthy in the eyes of his father. And when the blight finally takes the castle and he rushes to the king to try and protect him, to finally be able to prove that he does have some worth after a lifetime of putting himself in danger and working his way up the ranks to prove that he's worthy, he finds out that his father is a monster who knew what the blight was doing and chose instead to utilize it to try and become immortal. And driven to madness, Julius kills his father and then defends the throne that rightfully should be his. And when you find him, you get my favorite boss fight in this game. And it's just, I love it so much. It's so good. The boss fight is great. Julius has a super cool combo. The theme song that plays, Accolade, throughout the fight is incredible. I love Accolade. It's my favorite combat music in this game. And Julius has this beam, and you can use the beam, and it's super cool. It just, yeah. Julius is great. I love Julius. And I love everything about his story. It's really, really potent. This, hey, everything's falling apart. The White Priestess needs to be protected. The blight has to be purified. But I just want my dad to see that I'm worth something. And then when he finally gets that opportunity, he figures out what kind of a man his dad is. And it's completely diametrically opposed to who Julius is as a person. And he cannot face it. He cannot deal with it. And so he slaughters him. And then you fight him. And I love it. I love it so much. Julius is such a great character. We have 3 more characters to talk about, and then I'll let y'all go today. I know that I've just been going on and on about how much I love these characters. Fredia, the White Priestess of the Fount, who could have given up her daughters to save herself. Daughters in her clones, right? But she views them as her daughters. She is their mother in her mind. And she can't bring herself to let them die. They die anyway. There's no way she could have stopped it. But she won't let them die to try and save her. And so you have 3 different endings that you can get in this game. And one of them is her saying, no, it's okay. I'll eventually be strong enough again to purify this blight. You just go. I'll purify the blight that's in you right now. You just go. It'll be all right. Don't worry about me. Ending B of, I can't ask you to purify this. You're not strong enough. You can't handle it. And then you choose to stay with her anyway. And then ending C, if you have the curio, made by the ancients before and put back together by the Umbral Knight, who is the only one that could have, because he still is an ancient. You get all that, and then you go again and you fight the final boss twice because you get the second final form. And you get the ending that is my favorite ending in this game, which is where you purify and free Fredia, and she's finally allowed to die. She's finally allowed to be free of this burden. And then you're able to purify the land using the power from the ancients. And then you get this cutscene where Lily buries everybody. And it takes a long time. In that cutscene, she's grown up. Because it takes a long time, but she buries everyone. She purifies everyone. And I can't imagine how lonely that has to be, right? But it's so potent of an ending. Just this little girl going, no, this is what I need to do. These people need to be free of this. So I'm going to free them, no matter how long it takes. And just, oh. And that lets us transition into Lily really well. I like Lily a lot as a main character. She doesn't get a lot of dialogue, but the scenes that she does get, the moments of, hey, just go on without me, and then her shaking her head, or the moments of, well, just leave me here, and just the no, the moment when she hugs the Umbral Knight, the moment when she hugs Fredia, the moment when she's really upset, visibly upset about the cart, about the horse-drawn carriage that would carry the white priestesses around from Bale. She's visibly upset about that. Lily's a really, really solid character, even without dialogue. And then last, of course, is the Umbral Knight. The Umbral Knight is a really cool character. Sworn to this deathless pact, he just wants to be free, but he can't bring himself to hurt this little girl. And so he takes on the job again to protect her. And you'll get comments from him as you go through the game of comments of, hey, are you okay? Or comments of, hey, this place is rotten to the core. Or is this where one of my fallen brothers died? How did he make it here? And just the little moments that really sell you on the Umbral Knight of he's bound to Fredia, and through that bond bound to Lily. And yes, he's very tired, but he just can't bring himself to abandon her. And I love the Umbral Knight. I think that he's a really great character. As you can tell, I love the story of this game. I love the way all these characters tie in together. I love the fact that when you defeat a boss, you get to carry them with you and thus use them to help save the world that they cared so much about, I love the exploration of this game. I love slowly piecing everything together. I love the music. I love the art. I love this game. Ender Lilies 100% is worth playing, in my opinion. And if you've made it to this point and been spoiled on everything without playing the game, I still 100% think that you should. I'm really excited for a New Game Plus where I know the story now. But I guess I should stop rambling. Let me know your thoughts on Ender Lilies in the comment section down below. And until next time, I've been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum that Ender Lilies has to offer.